Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran in chapter 30, Surah Ar-Rum, verse 21 has said, "And among His signs is that He created for you spouses from among yourselves, that you may find tranquility in them. And He placed between you love and mercy. Indeed, in that are signs for a people who reflect." As we continue the commemoration of the 10 days of Ashura and beyond the 10 days of Ashura, as we remember the tragedy that befell upon the beloved family of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, there's one question that comes to our minds and certainly comes to my mind often as we realize the atrocity of that tragedy and the certain death that anybody that went with Imam al-Hussein was going to witness, or if it's not death, it would be imprisonment. The question that I ask myself is, how did Imam al-Hussein convince his family, his children, his wife, his wives, his sister, his companions, how did he convince all of them to join him? They didn't go on a family trip, for example, for entertainment. Imam al-Hussein himself declared in his mission, why was he rising? Why did he leave Medina? Knowing that the government of the time was completely against him. Knowing that the government was trying to force him and force his family to subject themselves. Yet we see the loyalty in his companions, but most importantly, all of his family joined him without hesitation. What kind of life this human being, this family was living, that they were all so united that they decided to join on this very perilous journey from Medina to Mecca, from Mecca in the direction of Kufa, and they stop at Karbala without hesitation. And that is why I started with this verse that describes marriage. And Allah does not describe marriage in the Holy Quran as a contract of convenience. He described it as a covenant built on sakan, sakina, meaning tranquility, mawadda, meaning love, and rahma, meaning mercy. And this is the verse to hold in mind as we speak of the person that I chose to talk about today, which is As-Sayyida Rabab, which is the wife of Al-Imam al-Hussein. Because her story cannot be told only as a chronicle of loss. We know what happened to her, and most importantly to her young infant. Such a tragedy to lose a 6-month-old infant, not to a normal death, but to the way that he was killed. But the question that I have, which I asked earlier, is what is it that made her capable of carrying that kind of patience in the face of that kind of calamity, that kind of catastrophe? There's a reason the Holy Quran ties love between spouses to a sign for those who reflect. Not a trivial thing. It's something that we need to reflect upon. A love that is real, that does not weaken a person. It roots them. It was this rootedness, this sakan that she had known throughout her marriage with Imam al-Hussein that carried her onto the sands of Karbala, even as that very marriage was being taken away from her throughout that journey. Her name was Al-Rabab bint Imra al-Qais ibn Adi al-Kilabiyya. The classical sources describe her family as a very noble family who during the time of the second caliph, they became Muslims. Before that, they were Christians. They were from Bilad al-Sham. So her father was a Christian who embraced Islam at that time, and her father was enamored with the Ahl al-Bayt. And so he decided to give his daughters in marriage into the household of the Prophet. And one of the daughters was Al-Rabab, who he allowed to marry Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. From this union, Al-Rabab bore to Imam al-Hussein 2 children. One we know as Sakina, the daughter of Imam al-Hussein, and the other child is known as Abdullah al-Radi', the infant. That's why they call him Abu Abdullah. In other traditions, it is the infant son that is called Ali Asghar. Al-Rabab came from a very noble family, but she wasn't just a lady that married Imam al-Hussein. Imam al-Hussein has had utmost respect and admiration for Al-Rabab, not only because, for example, she was just because of her being his spouse or because of her beauty, but he was very admiring of her eloquence. She was a person of very high character, very high morals. When she entered into that marriage, it wasn't an insignificant marriage for her. She entered the marriage with joy at the blessing that she had been granted. And the Imam alayhi salam reciprocated her with pure love and devotion. Now it's important to focus on that because it wasn't just a usual marriage. As I mentioned, Al-Rabab was of the finest women of her time. But throughout her marriage to Imam al-Hussein, it was a very fulfilling marriage that allowed her to be strong as she chose to accompany the caravan to Karbala. This wasn't a woman that was weak coming in. Now we need to take a break and think about what is it that makes a marriage successful, not only 1400 years ago, but today as well. As I mentioned, the Islamic framework talks about 3 things. When I started with that verse from Surah Al-Rum, sakan, tranquility, means this tranquility is a form of safety, an emotional safety, both for the man and for the woman. It's not only the woman, for example, that needs safety. The man needs safety in the marriage as well. So the Quran talks about sakan, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, talks about mawadda, which in English it's translated to love, but the English language is limited. Mawadda is a special type of love. It's not the love at the surface. It's a love that comes with knowledge. It's a love that comes with experience. When you know that, you know why you love this individual. This is the mawadda. So this is the second pillar of marriage that the Quran describes. And the third one is rahmah, mercy. And this rahmah, which means compassion, mercy, empathy. The husband, for example, or the spouse does not burden his spouse, his wife, beyond his or her capacity. Nor does a wife ask for her husband what exceeds his ability. This rahmah requires standing beside the other in their crises. Because marriage is a long time journey. It's not always pink and rosy. It's not always happy moments. Throughout life, the married couple, they start a family, they go through difficulties. Sometimes it's difficulty for the entire family, sometimes it's difficulty for one member of the family, for the husband or for the wife. And this is where the rahmah comes. When you sign up for this marriage, you sign up for the safety, the emotional and physical safety, the mawadda, of course, this love that is very important between spouses, but also for this rahmah, You know that there's an individual that will be with you in these times of hardship. Now when I talked about the Quranic perspective of marriage, but if you look at contemporary psychologists, they mention very similar things. For example, a psychologist called John Gottman, whose research is followed and has followed thousands of marriages over decades, identified specific observable patterns that distinguish marriages that last from those that don't last. Some of the relevant points that he mentions are that happy marriages maintain a deep, detailed knowledge of each other's inner world. So the two spouses know each other. They spend time to know each other, to understand each other's emotional vulnerabilities, for example, emotional states, what triggers them, what ticks them, what they like, what they dislike. Knowing your spouse genuinely is not incidental to love, it is foundational to it. Another point is turning towards your spouse, not away from them. In stable marriages, partners habitually notice and respond to each other's small bids for attention and connection, rather than letting them go unanswered. Meaning they care for each other. They care for the little things for each other. Not only, providing, making sure the house is in order, these, usual things, but care for the small things. Fondness and admiration. The partners in lasting marriages actively look for what is good in each other. Not only focus on the negative. Each one of us have strengths and have weaknesses. But each one of us has strengths. So in successful marriages, the spouses focus and admire the strength of each other, which will lead to appreciation of each other. And all of these are related to what the Quran also says. Sakina, which is second, this tranquility when you feel that your spouse admires you, accepts you, despite your flaws, you feel a sense of safety. I can communicate with my spouse anything because I'm safe. She can communicate anything because she's safe. This is what the Quran is describing. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. It's a place, it's like a refuge. Because we all go through difficulties and we need that refuge. Now when we think about Ar-Rabab, we realize that Imam al-Hussein, the way he treated her throughout their marriage, led her to feel this sense of safety, this mawadda, this tranquility, and of course this rahmah. Imam al-Hussein, in a very famous poetry, he said, وَلَعَمْرُكَ إِنَّنِي لَأُحِبُّ دَارًا تحل بها سكينة والرباب أحبهما وأبذل جل مالي وليس للائمي فيها عتاب ولست لهم وإن عتبوا مطيعا حياتي أو يغيبني التراب. In this famous line of poetry that he said in the honor of Rabab, publicly, this is Imam al-Hussein mentioning to his community publicly, and this is recorded in history, how much he loves his home, his union with Ar-Rabab. He says, by your life, I love a home in which Sakina and Rabab reside in. I love them both and would spend most of my wealth for them. I accept no criticism concerning that love, nor will I obey those who blame me so long as I live. And these words of poetry describe really how Imam al-Hussein truly created this sense of safety for his wife. Now it's important to understand the context in which Ar-Rabab went to Karbala. Al-Rabab had just given birth. As we know in the narrations of history, her infant son was about 6 months old on the day of Ashura. Imam al-Hussein left Medina on the 28th of Rajab, which is approximately 5 to 6 months before Ashura. Which means Imam al-Hussein left Medina while Rabab had just given birth, few days or few weeks ago. Now, many of you are parents. Many of you have experienced the birth of a child. Many of you have witnessed how your wives, for example, take time to recover. Now think about Ar-Rabab, who is in postpartum. And there's all these difficulties, physical, emotional, psychological difficulties, which the medical world today witnesses and attests to. The Quran does not romanticize childbirth into something effortless. It names it as wahnan ala wahn, hardship upon hardship. And so Ar-Rabab leaves Medina with Imam al-Hussein while in this state. It was very easy for her to say, I just gave birth. What is this journey? Why are we going? Why are we going this long journey? Let's just stay. Let me stay behind in Medina. But what made her go with Imam al-Hussein is this love. It's this marriage that was so deeply rooted in sakan, in mawadda, in rahmah. This great man that she had married, Imam al-Hussein, had fulfilled that love and that marriage to a point that this is a woman that was ready to sacrifice her physical pain, which came after childbirth, to go through that journey with her husband. And having an infant child with you on the journey, which constantly needs to feed, with sleepless nights, with the emotional vulnerability, extreme heat, scarce water, the physical hardship of traveling in the desert, the conditions were very difficult. Yet there's nothing in history that records Ar-Rabab, for example, as complaining, as saying, why are we here? Why did you bring us here in the desert? What is the point of all of this? She never complained. And then the calamity of calamities happens on the day of Ashura, when after all the companions and the men in the family of Imam al-Hussein die, Imam al-Hussein, it's as if he wants to leave no one with any excuse. He sees his infant son, 6 months old. He goes to Ar-Rabab and asks her, give me my son. Maybe they will have some mercy and give him water. And you know how a mother of a newborn son is very attached to that newborn. Very, very attached. And the newborn is very attached to his mother as well. I'm emphasizing this to show you how great this woman was. Again, this is not a woman that delivered speeches and these words of eloquence in the battlefield, but her stance, her patience, this didn't come out of nowhere. This comes out of a very strong, very stable marriage that was nurtured throughout the years, a marriage that we need to learn from. We need to deposit these stances of love and affection into our marriages so that we develop strong families, so that we maintain these bonds of marriage with our spouses. We know the rest of the story. Ali al-Asghar, Abdullah al-Radi' was shown to the enemy's army, and instead of meeting him with water, he was met with a 3-pronged arrow, which really breaks the heart of anyone listening to, but certainly has broken the heart of Ar-Rabab. And despite all of the tragedies, despite losing her infant son, losing her husband, whom she loved dearly, she stood fast during the calamities of after the 10th of Muharram, when she was taken captive with all the other women to Sham, and then eventually went back to Medina. History records that she remained loyal to Imam al-Hussein throughout the years until her death, and she did not marry anyone else as she could not forget her husband. And brothers and sisters, I chose this personality in particular because this is not a ma'soom lady. She's not an infallible. But she was married to a ma'soom, to an imam. And this imam we cry about and we mourn. He was a family man that truly gave to his family, that created this very strong, secure, safe bond with his family, that even a wife in postpartum decides to join that very difficult journey, not because she felt unsafe alone or she came from a very noble family. She could have said, I return to my family. But she decided to go through all of this because of that love and that nurturing that Imam al-Hussein developed over the years. May Allah give us the opportunity to learn and to apply these lessons within our own homes, within our own families, so that as spouses we complete and make each other strong. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولكافة المؤمنين والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.